What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing 3 extremely bizarre and unexplained disappearances. I was searching for some strange disappearances and came across so many. I think there's another series about to begin, guys. Our first case is an unsolved disappearance that could very possibly have been the result of a witch's hex or curse. The second case has all the trappings of a little boy either being lured by something nobody else could see or trying to flee from the same. The last one is another small child vanishing into thin air in a crowd full of people and turning up deceased 16 days later, devoid of any injury at all, any clue at all as to what happened to him. Here it is, guys, 3 extremely strange cases of people completely disappearing into thin air. First up is a man named William Roach, who everyone calls Bill. Bill has been missing for more than 30 years now, and it's believed a curse from a witch is what led to his demise. It makes me so annoyed when I see things like this. Very reminiscent of the Christopher Case death I covered a few months ago, where a witch is alleged to have sent shadow people to kill him. It boggles my mind, knowing what I know about witchcraft and spells, how anyone who has that kind of power could use it for something like making a man go missing or possibly even killing him, because all witches know what happens when we use our magic for things like this. Anyways, guys, let's just get into it. William Bill Roach was a 25-year-old university student when he went missing in Armadale, North Tabledons, New South Wales, Australia, back on New Year's Eve in 1993. I just want to say here really quick that I have a New Jersey accent. That means I pretty much butcher everything, including the American English language. So forgive me if I mispronounced anything going forward in the video. So anyway, the police still have no idea what happened to Bill, but at the time of his disappearance, he was believed to have been living with his girlfriend, who described herself as a practicing witch. There is definitely a possibility that some kind of black magic or curse is directly involved here in this case. Prior to his disappearance, he went to a secret ceremony for witches where magic mushrooms were known to grow. While he was there, the attendees asked him to walk across a stream, but only touching the stones. However, he disobeyed and jumped right into the water. He was silly, playful. His disobedience caused one of the witches to allegedly put a, quote, death curse, end quote, on him, and shortly after the ceremony, he went missing and was never seen again. To this day. Could this all be just a big coincidence? Well, you guys should know by now how I feel about coincidences, but what do you all think? It's been reported that William really believed he was the victim of this death curse. Just like in the Christopher Case incident, it really affected him too. New England Police District Commander Detective Superintendent Steve Laska stated that the angle of witchcraft was being pursued, although they were following up on several other angles, such as William possibly being a part of a drug organization. Let me just stop right here for 1 minute. It's being pursued, the witchcraft angle, right? How in the world do you even begin to pursue something you would never in a million years be able to prove or disprove one way or another? But I digress. As always, moving on. Superintendent Laxa noted that William probably fell into harm's way and asked anyone who was involved with the drug trade in Armadale back in 1993 to reach out to the authorities. While he wouldn't confirm or deny whether witchcraft was connected to the drug investigation, he did say, quote, there are a number of persons or interests from varying groups, end quote. So let me get this straight. He wants, quote, people from the drug trade to come forward and admit involvement in illegal activities. Okay, sure. So did one of the witches at the ceremony really put a quote-unquote death curse on William Roach for something as small as messing up their ceremony? I mean, something like that would definitely annoy me, which is why I'm not a part of a coven, but seriously, all for not following the directions for crossing a stream? Or was he just the victim of foul play? Or is there something else altogether here which just hasn't been put together yet? Bill's body has never been discovered, and without any human remains, it's hard to know for sure what exactly happened to him. It's been so long and still no closure for his loved ones or any definitive answers at all. But hopefully the $1 million reward that's being offered for any information regarding the disappearance will change that, and hopefully soon. I'm not sure, because of how it was worded in my source material, what you would have to know or show the police in order to claim the reward, but obviously if you have any information, stop being a coward and come forward. They should just look at the alleged witch's life, in my opinion, from when this happened until now, because everything you put out when it comes to spells and curses and even karma and energy, right? It comes back to you 3 times, except in death spells, because they come back times 10. Our next case is a little boy who seemingly was either trying to catch up with or outrun something nobody else was able to see. The circumstances around this disappearance are absolutely terrifying, especially for me as a mother of a 3.5-year-old boy at that. But it's the bizarreness of it all that made me really want to share this one with you guys. On Labor Day weekend of 1975, a young couple by the name of Ron and Jill Newton set out from their hometown in Manchester, Maine on a camping adventure to Natanis Point Campground in Chain of Ponds, Maine, right up against the Canadian border. It was a fairly remote area, but the family wasn't worried as they were in their newly purchased secondhand tent trailer, and as they headed out with their daughter Kimberly, age 6, and Curt, age 4, and with 3 other families joining them later, everyone was in great spirits. They arrived at the campground without incident on Friday and enjoyed some fishing, some hiking. The kids enjoyed playing on the bicycle Kimberly had brought with them and the brand new bright red tricycle, which was little Curt's pride and joy that he also had brought along to the camping trip. On Saturday night, they had a massive bonfire and stood all around it laughing and talking, simply enjoying each other's company and enjoying the vacation. Everything seemed completely, perfectly, and absolutely normal, regular. In fact, it was turning out to be a really amazing trip for everyone involved, and not a single one of them could have possibly imagined the horror that was about to grip them. One of them was about to vanish into literal thin air and become, to this very day, one of Maine's most bizarre and terrifying mysteries. That Sunday, September 1st, 1975, started out fine. The families had breakfast, and Jill Newton went off to wash her kids' muddy clothes not far away at the bathhouse. 6-year-old Kimberly and 4-year-old Curt were playing near and around the campground, and things seemed to be just as normal as they could possibly be. Ron decided that they needed more firewood for the chilly weather and decided to hop in his truck and head down towards the logging road to collect some of the firewood at 10 a.m. One of the family friends from another trailer happened to look outside and saw little Curt get on his red tricycle and bolt off down the road as if trying to catch up with his dad. And he seems to have kept on riding right off the face of the earth, actually, because later that same morning, a little girl from an adjacent campsite by the name of Lou Ellen Hansen said she saw little Curt pedaling by, and that's apparently the last time anyone ever saw him again. What made this all the more strange and bizarre was that Curt was known and said to be very shy, and actually, while he was able to be out in the woods camping while in the company of his family where he felt safe, there's absolutely no explanation for why he would suddenly decide to take off on his own like that. You see, Curt was absolutely petrified of being in those woods. His parents or someone had to be with him every single second, or he would scream and cry in fear and terror. In fact, just the day before he vanished, he had said to his mother in an ominous tone, quote, "Mama, there's monsters there," end quote, meaning the woods which surrounded where they had been camping. It's said that even when they were at home, the little boy would never leave the backyard of their house by himself. He was also seen as being attached to his mother by the hip, rarely going anywhere out of eyesight from her. So why he had gone off tearing down the road on his new tricycle all by himself was anyone's guess. At this point, no one really realized the gravity of the situation. Jill came back from washing the clothes, not gone for even 10 minutes, and assumed that her son had gone off with her husband. It wasn't until Ron came back and asked where Curt was that it really dawned on anyone that the boy had disappeared. The frantic parents went around to all of the other nearby campsites and asked if anyone had seen the little boy. It was then that they would meet a man and fellow camper named Jack Hansen. He was the caretaker of the campground, and he told them that he had found the red tricycle abandoned on a dead-end dirt road close to a place that he had nicknamed, quote, the dump, where miscellaneous trash was always piled up by various campers. At the time, he had suspected that someone had thrown the bike away, even though the fact that it was shiny and brand new had raised his eyebrows a little bit. Jack took the worried parents out to where the tricycle still sat, straight up and untouched. It seemed to have been carefully placed off the road, as if by someone who was coming back at any moment and wanted to keep it safe and brand new looking. Only no one had ever come back, and Curt Newton was somewhere out there in the darkening woods, nowhere to be seen or found. It wasn't long after this that one of the largest search and rescue operations the state of Maine had ever seen was started. Searchers used helicopters, advanced heat-detecting equipment, loudspeakers calling out the boys' names, and tracker dogs. But not only couldn't they find Curt, they literally found no sign of him. Nothing whatsoever. Hundreds of volunteers joined in the efforts, tirelessly scouring the area, and the news was soon crawling with headlines concerning the missing boy. As temperatures in the area plummeted, the search became even more desperate. Flyers were distributed on both sides of the state border, yet there was nothing. The area where he had originally gone missing, where that red tricycle sat eerily untouched, was in the meantime found to be completely barren of any sign of struggle, nor any trace of animal attack, not even any footprints to indicate where he had gone, and no trail for the dogs to follow. The bloodhounds were reported as running around in circles, completely confused. It was as if Curt Newton had just evaporated into thin air. One of the head investigators of the disappearance, Dwayne Lewis, would lament, quote, "Every now and then in the history of mankind, the incredible happens that we can't make sense of. We should have found him, but we didn't," end quote. The search officially ended on September 13th after over 3,000 search personnel and volunteers had thoroughly combed the area with every tool at their disposal, only to come up completely empty-handed. With the weather just getting colder and colder by the minute, it was thought that he had little chance of survival. Everyone had their own theory as to what happened to him, too. I mean, of course. Curt's parents thought that he may have been abducted, but by who and how? It was such a remote area. The tricycle had been found on a dead-end road, and there was no sign that any vehicle had recently even come through there. Police could find no evidence whatsoever of foul play or abduction. So where was he? Had it been a wild animal? There was no blood, no animal tracks, and no torn clothing indicative of such an attack. Another idea was that he had stopped his bike and gotten lost, wandering deeper and deeper into the woods. But how would this have happened so fast, and why weren't such meticulous search efforts able to turn up any sign of him whatsoever? Some further clues and leads turned up in the days after the search from people claiming to have seen the boy, but none of these ever led anywhere, and pictures sent in by people of who they thought were Curt were denied by his parents. The case went cold, and cold it still remains. What happened to little Curt? How did he manage to escape out into the wilderness in such a short span of time, only to leave behind his shiny new tricycle and nothing else whatsoever? Remember, that tricycle was his absolute most prized possession. Why would he leave it? We probably will never know the answers to these questions, unfortunately. I think it's very possible Curt was abducted by the Fae or accidentally walked into one of their realms or some portal to another dimension. I mean, who knows where he ended up, right? It's so sad, and I always end up picturing the little boys I cover this age as RJ. So I'm not only fascinated, but brokenhearted by cases like this. Could he have seen something, gotten off the tricycle, and walked into the woods to find it? I mean, that makes sense to me, right? Followed something or someone into the woods. But why wasn't he found? Sometimes people that vanish into thin air turn up somewhere, who knows how long later, deceased. Usually this is under strange circumstances which somehow turn out to be even more weird than the disappearance itself. Our last case we're going to go through today is the case of 5-year-old Steven McCarron. Tucked away within the quaint, rugged countryside near the craggy coast of Ayr in South Ayrshire, Scotland, is a place once called Bootlands Ayr. Opened in 1946, it was designed to be an extravagant vacation or holiday camp for people looking to get away from it all. The place was extremely secluded and seemed to be made with rest and relaxation in mind. The 110-acre complex was equipped with a variety of luxurious facilities, such as a dining hall, amusement arcades, rides, indoor and outdoor pools, a seaside amusement park, a boating lake, tennis courts, a ballroom, a theater, a medical center, chalets, and even its own miniature railway. The camp has changed names over the years, becoming Wondercrest World in 1982 and then Craig Tara in 1999, and although it seems like an amazing place to take a vacation, it is perhaps most famous as the setting for the very mysterious disappearance and death of a young boy named Steven McCarron. On September 19th of 1988, the 5-year-old Steven McCarron was visiting the camp from Hamilton, Scotland, on vacation with his aunt and uncle, Lynn and Ian Snedden. By all accounts, this was intended to be and started out as a fun day out, and the boy had been very excited about and looking forward to it all very much. It seemed to be everything he had been dreaming and hoping it would be, and the family had a great time enjoying the myriad attractions the park had to offer. Even the weather seemed to be cooperating, as it was a perfect, clear, and sunny day. It should have been a dream, but it was all about to turn into an absolute nightmare. At one point during the otherwise joyous day, Steven was playing on an escalator not far from his aunt and uncle, who were keeping an eye on him. For just a brief moment, the boy was hidden from view by the crowds, and then he was just gone. At first, his aunt and uncle thought nothing of it. After all, he had just been right there and had only been obscured for literally a second, so they assumed that he had just wandered off and couldn't have gone far. The couple walked around the area where he was standing just moments before, but the boy was nowhere to be seen, and when they called his name, There was no answer either. Considering how crowded the park was, they still weren't fully alarmed just yet, but after spending about half an hour desperately searching the immediate area, they began to realize that something was very wrong. They notified the proper authorities, who immediately conducted a full, intensive search of the camp and its surrounding remote countryside for 5 miles around. This would turn up no sign of little Steven. The case would quickly catapult itself to one of the largest missing person searches in Scottish history, involving hundreds of police and volunteers using dogs, aircraft equipped with special infrared cameras, and even divers to search the water, but still there was no trace of him anywhere. Flyers with the boy's picture and descriptions of what he had been wearing were also widely distributed and led nowhere. It's strange here too, with such massive amounts and crowds of people, that nobody at all ever came forward and said they really saw anything. There were a few witnesses, but for that many people, I mean, there should have been way more information here. The kid literally vanished into thin air. The immediate theory was that Steven had been abducted. This seemed almost obvious to the authorities involved in the beginning, as it seemed to be the only answer for why he would be nowhere in the camp or in its vicinity. There was one report from a witness claiming to have seen him at a park cafe with an unidentified middle-aged man, as well as a few other witnesses who said they had possibly seen him walking about the camp holding hands with a man, but this was all inconclusive. They couldn't prove if it was Steven one way or another, because the witnesses would say, like, yeah, he looked like that, but how do you really know? One witness even reported how it seemed as if the man was even perhaps trying to comfort and help the lost little boy. They said it looked like the man was possibly trying to help him find his aunt and uncle. While kidnapping seemed an easy explanation, odd clues began to come in from other witnesses who gave testimony that suggested otherwise. One witness claimed to have seen Steven climbing over the camp's 7-foot-high fence at around the time of his disappearance, and several drivers said that they had seen him walking alone along the nearby Ayr Tunbury Road. If that were true, then it suggested that he had, for whatever reasons, run off to venture out on his own into the wilderness on foot. If that were the case, though, then how could he have gotten so far undetected amidst such a massive, large-scale search over such isolated terrain for 5 miles around? They had started the search pretty much right away, and 5 miles around the area where his aunt and uncle had last seen him. So in other words, how in the world had he gone undetected? A little boy climbing a 7-foot fence and then taking off on foot? Why hadn't anyone stopped to ask this little boy what he was doing all alone in such an isolated area, walking on the side of the road like that? All these drivers that came forward and said they saw this. I know I wouldn't be just like, oh, look at that little boy all alone on the side of the road with no adult supervision. That's nice. Want to go to Sonic? It's very annoying and frustrating, because whether or not that was Steven, these drivers and other people claim to have witnessed this, and nobody stopped to do anything about it. Call it into the authorities at the very least. I would be afraid the child would be hit by a passing vehicle or something. 5 years old is not that old at all. This is basically still a baby we're talking about here. Okay, that was my rant. There's one to be found in almost every video, so let's move on. The mystery continued until 16 days later, when on October 2nd, a woman was walking her dog in the vicinity of a place called the Carrick Hills, around 6 miles from the camp, when she came across the dead body of a boy lying curled up in a ditch near some lonely, mist-shrouded farmhouses. The body was quickly identified as Steven McCarron. The mystery wasn't solved yet, though. Although it had by this time been assumed that he must have been murdered, there wasn't a mark on him. There were no signs of injury or struggle, and the official autopsy would cite exposure to the cold weather as the cause of death. It was extremely strange that this little boy was missing the jacket he had been wearing and was left only in his t-shirt too, because where the hell was the jacket? It's never been found, by the way. Another weird little clue was that the boy's socks had been removed and stuffed into his pocket, and then his shoes put back on without the socks. Why would he do that in the frigid and freezing cold weather? Making it even more bizarre is that the boy's father would later say that Steven didn't even know how to tie his own shoes. Another curiosity is that the massive search had methodically and thoroughly scoured the area nearly immediately after the vanishing, but had seen no sign of the boy. While there was tons of criticism aimed at the police for not extending the size of the search area because they went 5 miles around and he was found about 6 miles out, authorities insisted that their search radius was more than adequate and that it would have been impossible for a 5-year-old boy to navigate the thick woods, marshes, and various hills and gullies that made it notoriously difficult terrain for even an adult to manage for such a distance in so little time on his own. 6 miles in what, an hour? Steven's family would agree that they knew he would have been physically incapable of such a harsh journey, especially when taken so quickly. So how did he get all the way out there so fast and completely undetected? Was he brought out there by some random stranger who, for whatever reason, didn't harm him at all? But what? Change their mind and abandon the poor boy? This is extremely unlikely in my opinion. There were no signs of anyone else having been at the spot where he was eventually found. Why would a kidnapper bring him all the way out there just to abandon him in his t-shirt and then take off his socks to put them in his pocket and then put his shoes back on? None of it made any sense, and in fact, again, it still doesn't. An investigation into the case in 1989 saw police leaning towards the idea that Steven had simply run away, then wandered out there past the search perimeter, somehow evading detection, and then kept walking beyond what people had thought him capable of until he collapsed out there in that remote area and died, possibly taking refuge in that ditch for warmth, all the while having removed his jacket and socks for unknown reasons. This is highly unlikely to me, and I hope I'm not alone in this decision for a number of reasons. First, there doesn't seem to have been any reason for why the boy would have wanted to run away. Everyone who knew Steven said he was a happy, well-adjusted child. He was said to be having the time of his life at this camp. He was on vacation. So he's having the time of his life, overjoyed, and then just walks off. When asked why they thought he would want to leave and take his chances out in the bleak, forbidding Scottish countryside, one investigator on the case named Jerry Gallagher has stated, quote, "Why do I think Steven ran away? I think he was a little boy who was missing his mother and father, who was homesick and was trying to make his way home to Hamilton, which makes the whole incident all the more sadder." End quote. This theory makes no sense, and the family agrees. This has no explanation for anything. Not to why he would suddenly and randomly, while having the time of his life at a place he had been so looking forward to going for such a long time, decide he would go and try to find his mom and dad all by himself. In my experience with my son, who's 3.5, and my other sons, when they were younger, a child will simply approach the adult they're with and say something to the effect of, "I miss my mommy and daddy," or "I want to go home." Also, he didn't even know how to tie his own shoes. Did he suddenly learn, or was he playing his family the whole time and actually did know how, but he was just letting his family do the tying because he was lazy or something? Guys, I'm not trying to be mean or funny, but it sounds absolutely absurd, doesn't it? Indeed, it seems we will never have the answers to this one either, and another little beautiful baby was taken from this world far too soon, with no reasonable or rational explanation, as if there ever could be one for the death of a 5-year-old child. This makes it all the more harder to bear, and my heart literally bleeds for these families, for the mothers, the fathers, the family, the loved ones. That's all I have for you today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you enjoyed hanging out with me, if you want to help me out, please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you are subscribed, make sure you're still subscribed and make sure your notification bell is on. I'm a little more nasal in this one and out of breath because I'm still getting over that damn cold. I don't know when it's finally going to go away. So thank you for bearing with me. If you haven't seen a Stemma live stream, that's myself and Steve Stockton. Come on in on Friday nights to Campfire Stories on Missing Persons and Mysteries channel starting at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Or come on in on Sunday night to our Fireside Chat starting again at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time on Missing Persons and Mysteries. I'm trying to get the links back, but they won't be in the description box this time. You're just going to have to catch it live. If you want to see what my Wednesday night stream is all about, where I do live intuitive oracle readings from around 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time to like 11:30 Eastern Time, come on in, have a card read, or check out the description box for a link to one of those live streams. Also in the description box, you will find a link to my October 7th Spaced Out Radio interview with Dave Scott, where I talk about my book, Missing the Fae Thoery by Gemma Jade. I talk all things Fae, all about the book, and even Robot Granny. Links for the paperback and Kindle version of my book on Amazon will also be in the description box. Thank you everyone who supported me. If you want a signed copy, please just get in touch with me before you make your purchase. The live stream with April Arrington, Caleb Smith's mother, was also privatized for some reason. I'm not really sure what's going on there. I think it has something to do with the algorithm, but always remember justice for Caleb Smith. His birthday was yesterday from the day I'm filming this, November 6th. So, guys, just, you know, keep in mind that we're not giving up on justice for Caleb or Keeslyn. Everyone just has a lot of things going on, including April, and she's doing really big things with the case, all right? So we have to do nothing but support her and stand behind her. Also, Patreon, PayPal for donations, my Amazon wish list gift link, also in the description box. If you have any encounters with the supernatural and or paranormal that you want me to put in my listener encounter series, please email me at gemmajadeparanormal@gmail.com. Also, if you want a personal reading, I do them for free. They may take me a week or two, but I do put a donation link in the description box, which, you know, is not mandatory. So guys, that's all I have. That's it. I'm not feeling well, so I'm a little discombobulated. And also, I feel like I keep tripping over my words. So I hope you really enjoyed this video because there are so many more that I want to cover as well. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything to be a nice, decent human being. But also make sure you're kind to yourself too, okay? Because sometimes we forget self-kindness somehow. You know, it just kind of gets lost in our everyday lives of doing things for other people. Smile at a stranger. Always go in grace. Have your best day. Have your best night. And I will see you next time.